I wanted to plant trees around the church. This is after my family and I are all believers. We're all in the same place. We've moved from our doctor-sized house, to where we were, and I offered to do this, and I was told I had the theology of a tree hugger, and that was not a compliment in the church.
No,
and that got me going, and I read through the Bible from beginning to end. And then the first was, what does God say about trees? Is the first, question that I had. And there's a tree on the first page of the Bible. First Psalm begins with a tree. First page of the New Testament has Jesus' family tree. Last page of the Bible has a tree on it. Bible calls itself a tree of life. The highest compliment that the Bible gives anyone is to call them a tree. Every major character and every major theologic event in Scripture has a tree marking the spot. It just goes on and on. We are grafted into the tree of life. The only thing that Jesus ever harms is a tree. The only thing that can harm Jesus is a tree. Highlight the first 3 chapters of the Bible, of Genesis, with every sentence that has a tree in it. You've just highlighted a third of the opening of Scripture. And it just goes on and on and on. And Jesus died hugging a tree for me, and I'm happy to be called a tree hugger at this point.
I guess I've never thought about that particular question. What does the Bible say about trees? And I guess that for you, did it start as something I want to say trivial, or something that you're just like, okay, well, what does it say? Or did you know that there was something there that was prompting you to look into that?
Yeah, it very much, it's actually, if you will, a watermark that God put on Scripture. There are patterns of what happens with trees. Think God calls Moses and Gideon from trees, tells David to go battle for trees. It just goes on and on. And it gets so specific around Christ that by the way, the only a physical description of Christ in the Bible in a prophecy in Isaiah is he grew up before us like a little tree out of dry ground. And Christ is surrounded by all these different trees. They throw palms on the road in front of him. He's the anointed one with olive oil. There's the cedars of Lebanon that are inside the temple where he's talking, and yet he never mentions any of them. He only ever mentions one genus of tree. So anytime the Bible gets really narrowed down like that, across all of 4 Gospels, there's something going on. For instance, I'll give you from an unrelated area. The Bible has 30 to 35 gemstones in it, somewhere, I forget exactly, somewhere in there. And yet Christ only mentions one, and he mentions it repeatedly. Why? So the Bible is edited on purpose, to be very specific there. And the only
which gemstone was
pearl,
that?
The pearl.
Okay.
And the gates of heaven are made of pearls. And so that it is the only gem that's organic. It's the only one that's made by an animal. It has an inorganic nidus in it, and then it has an organic part. And that's a mirror of how Christ is both human and God. And so, of course, that's what holds the gates of heaven open, is Christ. He's the pearl of great price. So the same thing is true with trees. The only tree that Jesus mentions is a ficus tree. If it's a sycamore, it's a sycamore fig. And so that fig is very important. And for the environmental world, if you will, it's very, very important, because a fig is the first tree that shows up in Scripture that we can identify. And it is part of the fall. And it is a symbol of the fall, and therefore it is a symbol of the separation between God and man. We try to hide ourselves with it. So when Jesus comes on the scene and he meets Nathanael, and he said, a true son of Israel in whom there's no guile, in whom there's no Jacob left. It's a tremendous compliment. And Nathanael says, how'd you know me? He said, I saw you under the fig tree. And what Jesus is saying is, there's no hiding from me behind fig leaves anymore.
Right.
And he doubles down on that when because Nathanael has said, can any good thing come out of Nazareth? Remember I said the only description of Jesus in the Bible is in Isaiah. He grew up before us like a little, and it's Nazareth. That's a little twig out of dry ground. In other words, Nathanael missed the tree prophecy. Jesus is grinning. He said, you think that's something? I'm Jacob's ladder. I'm that tree too. This is the connection between earth and heaven. And
that's incredible parallel between, almost hiding behind the fig leaf, and then I guess Nathanael wouldn't even consider himself hiding, but the parallel of being obscured by it and under it, I've never thought about that. That's incredible.
There are thousands of things like that in scripture that not available in seminaries, so to speak. You've got to dig them out for yourself, and it's amazing.
And was all this from personal study, or what good resources did you find that
I didn't find a whole lot of resources. I mean, there what if you look in Bibles that are older, and I can pull one off the shelf here. I have a 150-year-old Thomas Nelson King James Study Bible. And it has 40 pages on plants and trees in the Bible in it. I've been preaching at a church here in Lexington for the last 3 weeks. I'm a guest there. It's not my church, but it's a wonderful church. And one of the two services in the big main place, and then one in a downtown church that's on a park, an older church, and that's in the Sunday evenings. And I found one of those giant old, church Bibles in a back room.
Yep.
I love those things.
Big old dusty one, yeah.
And again, there's all kinds of pictures of plants, of animals, of birds, of the animals in Scripture. We've just dissected the Bible as academics for the last 100 years and forget that God wrote his creation. He wrote himself into creation too. The laws that govern the movement of the planets reflect the orderliness of God, that type of thing.
Yeah.